So I guess it's pretty well assumed my name is Candid Frank. And then we've got Aaron over there, Aaron William Freeland, the brains behind the operation. Aaron, how you doing, buddy?
Doing all right, Frank. I'm slowly starting to realizing that wearing a red shirt with a green chroma key screen behind me probably wasn't the best idea.
It looks
I
pretty
look
good, actually.
look like a little bit of a force ghost around the shoulders there with the extra little green bits
Yeah.
showing up.
Oh, I see that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, I wouldn't have thought that would be a problem, but yeah, okay.
Lesson learned for next time. But I mean, color blindness is red green, right? So that could be part
Absolutely.
of it.
Absolutely. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to make a change.
Perfect.
I'm going to change my background to what people are used to seeing on this show. There we
Ah,
go.
there we go.
There, back to that. I just finished doing the CFL show. We decided to do it a little earlier. We have a young lad that it's his birthday, and we're going to go help celebrate his birthday.
Oh,
So
wonderful.
that's going to be a lot of fun. Yeah, it's always nice. It's always nice seeing happy youngsters. Um, so how you been? How was your
I've been
vacation?
all right. Been all right, all things considered. Had a nice week up in Tobermory, and you know,
I saw the pictures
yeah, it's a lot of fun up there. Very quiet and relaxing, just to get away from everything for a bit.
and
So
some history.
yeah. How about yourself? How have you been?
Well, I had a really terrible summer cold, and and went to the beach anyway. Because how do you worry about a cold when it's 30 degrees?
Yeah, that's a fair point. Just as a heads up as well, Frank, hockey season is starting back up for me again. So if I look a little beat up come Mondays, you'll know why. I'll be playing hockey on Fridays and Mondays and lacrosse on Sundays, leaving me only Saturdays free on the weekend for rest and relaxation. But those are going to be taken up with Toronto Rock game and Toronto Marlies games. So
Yeah,
everything is picking up again. I'm glad to see that. I'm sorry we haven't been able to bring our loyal viewers as much content as we have in the past over the course of the summer.
yeah,
Things have been a little bit stressful, a little bit difficult. Some of our viewers may know Eduardo has been unavailable for chunks. I myself am actually not going to be back next Monday. I have a concert to attend, but I will be back for the Wednesday and whenever we start Fridays up again, Frank. So that's
yeah, and yeah. Eduardo lost an uncle, younger than him. No one when we lose people that are younger than us, it strikes pretty hard sometimes. So our best wishes to Eduardo and his family. They're in, I think, Venezuela,
Guatemala.
Guatemala. Thank you. Anyway, spending the month there, Shiva, and all other kinds of things that happen when you lose someone unexpectedly, and it was unexpected. All right, let's go to sports and let's talk about FIBA and let's talk about Dylan Brooks. What's up with him?
Well, there's been a lot of talk about certain players on Canada, and Dylan Brooks was formerly known as one of the bad boys when it came to Canadian basketball. However, he had a part in Canadian history on Sunday morning, leading Canada to an overtime victory over Team USA, who did not make the FIBA finals for the second year in a row, second tournament in a row. Sorry. Canada came out of that with a 127 to 118 victory, which is awesome. Um, Anthony Edwards was there. Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, SGA, certainly helped his own legend, and Lakers legend Austin Reeves were also there. But yeah, Dylan Brooks was definitely a bright light for Canada in that particular game. So it seems to be a changing of the guard with the Canadian Olympic basketball team. With making just the quarterfinals in the World Cup, they actually did manage to secure themselves a spot in Paris. So I'll be looking forward to seeing them participating next year.
No more need to work towards hoping to make it. They've made it, and now they can concentrate on what they're going to do when they're going to be there. And I got to tell you, I was impressed with this team throughout the tournament. I was impressed with the Canadian team, how dominant they were, in the early stages of the event. But more impressive was the fact that they overcame a loss and put them in the gun sights of Spain, and Spain a powerhouse in world basketball and FIBA, and they came back to beat them.
Now
That
that
was
was
quite the momentous moment.
very much so. Very great to see. And notwithstanding the loss to Serbia 96-85 in the quarterfinals, which relegated them to the bronze medal game, Canada found a way to bounce back after that and played very successful shutdown basketball. It was great to see.
You notice the Americans in every sport, when they don't win a gold medal, they don't win the bronze either,
I had noticed that. A bit
right?
of a trend, it seems. Like
It
they
it
kind of give up on it.
yeah, it's like, gold medal, that's all we want. We don't want that other medal. I appreciate that thinking, and but it does speak to the fact that you should go out and play the best you can each and every game, and not let the last game bother you so much. Which is why I'm impressed with Canada, because they achieved that goal, and then they came out and they won the bronze, and they did it in overtime, which is well. This is a great group of young players. We've seen this should not be a surprise to many that the Canadian basketball world is so dominant at this time. We've watched a lot of great young players enter into the NBA, first round draft picks, first overall, uh, dominant players, great players from our little country competing with American basketball players, and this shouldn't be a surprise. And Canada, I had the pleasure of calling play by play of the geez, now I'm trying to remember the 84 World Cup, I think it was here, or was it the 88, 84, 88 World Cup of FIBA basketball. And it was fun doing that. It's great basketball. And I've done a lot of high school stuff going back 30, 35 years. And I learned back then how popular the game was by sitting in a gymnasium of high school kids watching basketball, and the enthusiasm that was there was incredible. So for me, the popularity of basketball isn't a surprise. I said it on the shows I did back in the 80s, and it's finally looking like the fruits of that desire to love the game and to participate in it is coming true finally for Canadian basketball. The Olympics is going to be interesting.
Very much.
Very interesting. Okay, let's talk about the Blue Jays. And they're in clutch mode now.
Yeah, we're finally getting down to the short strokes in the end of the season, and the Jays are still they got 19 games remaining. They're looking to lock themselves up for a playoff spot at least. I don't know how frequently you've been following the games, Frank, but I certainly have noticed a slight change in the way that the Blue Jays have been playing lately. And one of those changes is the fact that runners in scoring position no longer seem to be their kryptonite,
They
at
don't
least over the
wither.
course of
They
the
don't
past
wither
series.
at second or third.
Exactly. They were they have been struggling with that for the majority of the season. For the longest time, they led the league with runners stranded, but they've managed to turn that around. The Jays in the last 10 games have gone 8-2. And their playoff odds have improved from just 38.4% to 79.2%. Meanwhile, Texas, who were at 3 or 7 in that stretch, and they're one of the teams that we're fighting it out with, went from 77.5 to 51.1%.
I
So,
think they've
uh,
lost 4 games in a row.
yeah, it hasn't been good for them at all. So,
Well,
this is
let's
one of
see if
those
they lose 7 in a row.
fingers crossed. I have
Right.
friends that are going to be at the Dome, so we're going to see
And
how that goes.
the Red Sox are coming for 2 series, and the Jays early in the season couldn't beat them, and then they swept them. I guess if you're a Jays fan, you're hoping they maintain that trend that they developed later in the season, because they're going to need to do that. They can eliminate Boston from the playoffs dependent on these 2 series, because they're down to 20 plus games. That's a handful in baseball talk. 162 is the normal amount, so it's going to be really interesting. And this Texas series is going to be really important.
For sure.
Hockey Canada, former NHL player responds to apology from former coach who had used racial slurs.
There was a coach recently who was rehired with a team in Lethbridge, Alberta, a gentleman by the name of Bill Peters. He back in 2009, about 13 years ago, was alleged to have used racist language against one of his own players, a player by the name of Akeem Aliu, who has a major role with the Hockey Diversity Alliance. Um, they he finally issued a statement about that sort of thing, and a lot of people were saying, "Well, why did it take 4 years between when it was originally revealed to now for Peters to apologize, when in reality he'd had 13 years and hadn't done anything about it until he needed to get a job." This to me doesn't sound like it's anything genuine. It sounds like it's more him saving face. And the response from Akeem Aliu was like, "Well, he apologized. Yeah, it doesn't change the fact that it really hurt, and it takes a lot of time for these things to actually get done. It's very difficult for me now to sort of empathize and believe that it's actually genuine. We'll have to see where it goes from here, but as it currently stands, Peters is still employed in Lethbridge."
I respect your opinion, of course, and but I'll take a pragmatic view and say Peters has laid, he basically made his bed, and now he has to live in it, and that bed's going to be very uncomfortable because he will be watched, and people will pay attention to what he says. So now, for a while, at least for a long time, I think, and maybe forever, he is going to need to be the kind of person that apology speaks to. So I'm not saying that he deserves total forgiveness. I think what he does deserve, though, is an opportunity to prove that he can walk the talk, and that's the important thing. Um, People make mistakes, but he's got to walk the talk now. That's the way it goes with that. Defenseman Matheson of the Habs named assistant captain of the Montreal Canadiens.
Yeah, so this is good news for the veteran. He is going to continue to serve as assistant captain along with Brendan Gallagher, and Nick Suzuki is going to retain his role as captain with the team. Matheson led the team's defenseman with 34 points in 48 games last season. In 8 seasons in the NHL, he's had 172 points in 465 games with the Panthers, Penguins, and Canadians. It's good to see a long-serving player and, by all accounts, a well-liked guy in the locker room get that bit of a promotion. So glad to see that.
Kent Hughes says he's willing to trade goalie Casey Smith.
Yeah, I look for a lot of movement in the next couple of weeks, especially as we start to get towards training camp with regards to goalies. There are a lot of goalies out there all of a sudden who may not necessarily be staying with the same teams. Casey DeSmith is certainly one of those. Um, it is possible that the 32-year-old might be sent out of town. He is removed from his playoff success. Martin St. Louis also mentioned that they have good options. DeSmith was actually acquired from the Penguins earlier this summer as part of the three-team Eric Carlson blockbuster trade. Um, so, he also filled in for Tristan Jarry, who had a bit of a disappointing season last year. It'll be interesting to see how it all pans out.
Goaltending,
I
goaltending,
know.
goaltending, goaltending. The Senators promote Ben Sexton to join DJ Smith's coaching staff.
So the good news is Toronto Marlies fans will no longer have to worry about facing Ben Sexton behind the Belleville Senators bench anymore. He's going to be moved up to torture a whole new bunch of Toronto players now that he's behind the bench with DJ Smith. Um, he was originally a seventh round draft pick in the 2009 draft. He's, however, spent the last 3 seasons as assistant coach with Belleville after being hired just before the COVID season.
Let's talk about the Canucks naming Quinn Hughes captain.
This is a move that I think everybody sort of saw coming. Quinn Hughes is very popular. He is young, which I think is one of the reasons why people might tend to overlook him. But he is the 15th captain in Canucks franchise history. He's the first defenseman to hold the honor for Vancouver since a three-player rotation back in the early 90s that included Doug Lidster on defense. The last full-time defenseman to don the captain's badge in Vancouver was Kevin McCarthy, and that's going back to shortly after I was born in 1979 to 1982. So Elias Pettersson and JT Miller, along with goalie Thatcher Demko, were all in contention for the vacant position. But Canucks head coach Rick Tocchet said Hughes displayed other qualities he was seeking in a captain, so went with him
Let's
instead.
go over to news here in Canada. The Freedom Convoy lawyers attempt to block Ottawa residents from testifying at trial. Why that? Why? What's the concern for them?
As most of our viewers may or may not know, Tamara Litch and Chris Barber are currently on trial for criminal charges related to those demonstrations that we had a couple of years back. Um, the Crown planned to call 5 Ottawa residents as witnesses in the case to describe what they saw and experienced during the convoy. That includes a lady by the name of Zexi Lee, who filed a class action lawsuit against the organizers on behalf of people who lived and worked in downtown Ottawa. Um, they're saying there's no need to call on these 9 witnesses because the witnesses didn't have any direct interactions with Litch or Barber, uh, and because Tamara Litch and Chris Barber didn't actually go there for an extended period of time and interact with people who weren't part of the protest, they feel that their testimony may be biased
Because of the effect the protest had on where they live,
on where they lived in their
which
lives. And
says they were. Okay. All right. Well, that's
eh,
I'm just saying. I just throw that out there. BC study says fish stocks along the Atlantic Pacific coast unaffected by marine heat waves. Oh, that's good news.
Yeah, there was originally some concern. This study, which was published on August 30th in the journal Nature, looked at data from between 1993 and 2019, which included 248 marine heat waves, which are prolonged periods of warmer ocean temperatures. They looked at 82,322 samples of heat wave data, and they actually found that. Um, it didn't actually negatively affect the fish, which is a good thing for fisheries, and it's a good thing for recovering populations along the BC coast. Um, However, the study does warn that as marine heat waves get longer and more intense, fisheries may eventually be affected because marine life is more vulnerable to warming than terrestrial life.
Absolutely. Let's talk about the Maritimes and Newfoundland. They have an uneasy feeling. What's going on the East Coast, man?
Well, Hurricane Lee is traveling up the east coast. Um, it's kind of unclear at this point. However, Port Basque is still recovering after last year's hurricane damaged over 100 homes and swept a few people out to sea. They're starting to realize that, you know what, uh, in Nova Scotia, in particular in Amherst, the Chignecto Isthmus is also in danger of getting swamped. So there are concerns with these increasing storms due to climate change that they're not exactly having a good time with. So, not to mention the hurricane that went through Halifax last year as well. So there's that to consider, and wildfires are still burning. So that's a thing.
Wow.
Yeah,
Something to be concerned about. In 3 years, Crown lawyers spent 1,672 hours keeping Doug Ford's leaked mandate letters secret.
that's uh,
Expand.
that's that's a lot of hourly billing um, here. Between July 2018 and 2021, Ontario Crown lawyers actually had to dedicate almost 1,700 taxpayer-funded hours to the province's case to keep Doug Ford's now leaked mandate letters a secret. That's 209 eight-hour workdays, or about 10 months of 40-hour work weeks, all within the past 3 years. Now, mandate letters, for those who aren't familiar with the political works, traditionally out the marching orders a premier has for his or her ministers after taking office and are routinely released by governments across the country. But the Ford government has gone to these extraordinary measures to keep these 2018 letters secret by appealing court orders to disclose the records all the way up to Canada's top court. So Global News did finally manage to get their hands on a copy of all 23 of Ford's 2018 mandate letters. Um, but yeah, I mean, basically, the Ford government has been using our own tax dollars to keep his government's letters secret from us. So it's an interesting situation.
Not so
You
transparent.
No, unfortunately not. And when you couple that together with the blowback that he's currently receiving from the Greenbelt situation, it's certainly creating unstable sands in the political landscape, to be kind.
Well, we're having some issues. There are some that are concerned that Tory policy could harm LGBTQ plus children, advocates say.
Yeah, the first openly transgender person to run for the federal Conservatives is warning that a policy adopted by the party at their recent meeting could harm gender diverse children if it ever becomes law. Hannah Hodson is the person in question, and she says the language in the policy change voted on by delegates at a conservative policy convention on Saturday, this past Saturday, is transphobic. They voted in favor of a future conservative government prohibiting medicinal or surgical interventions for gender diverse and transgender children. A policy denying gender affirming care could potentially lead to more deaths from suicide amongst transgender youths. When you look at all of the demographics out there, those are some of the most affected individuals when it comes to those unaliving themselves due to inavailability of care. So it's something to keep an eye on and be concerned about.
And so, in this issue, I find sometimes what screams at me is emotional support. I just worry sometimes that we're always in a rush to provide pharmaceutical support before we offer emotional support. I worry more about why, and maybe we could do our best to try and figure out why these kids feel so badly, and is there a process that can be made to not make them feel suicidal? Because depression is something that's close to my heart, and I can understand how depression can control you. um, I don't know, Aaron. I'm not a big fan of asking a 5-year-old if they feel they're a boy or a girl. I just don't think that's so. I feel that. And what I don't know is up the scale of age, when do we move to pharmaceutical intervention?
Well, and here's the thing: a lot of people like to say, "Oh, well, I don't like the fact that you're trying to give boobs to a 6-year-old." That's not the case. 99.9% of the time, it's not about giving boobs to a 5-year-old or removing a penis from a 6-year-old. That's not the sort of gender affirming care that they're referring to here. They are
Clarify.
referring to individuals who are close to, if not necessarily at the age of consent yet, and are no longer a minor, being unable to receive the psychological care and potentially the pharmacological or hormonal therapy that they need in order for them to be healthy, right?
Or
And
doctoral, right?
exactly.
We need a doctor where operations are taken.
Yeah.
I'm I'm concerned for the ones that commit suicide. I'd like to know more about them, and I'd like to know more about how they got to where they are. I understand that solutions need to be acted on, because that's what you're referring to here. Is that we know two things. We know there's an issue, and it leads to suicide. Um, what do we do to make that happen less? Um, Even before, because from my understanding, it's very minimal. The whole process of pharmaceutical or doctoral care takes a while. It's not something that you go into a doctor's office and you say, "Well, my 14-year-old feels she's a boy, so let's do it." People have to understand that there's a process. It just doesn't happen like that. It's not you flip a switch and it all happens. There legitimately is a lot of concern and care by the parents to make sure that their kids are safe and taken care of. It, I understand that, and I'm open to that kind of stuff. But like I said, I'm worried about uh, the solution. Are we jump into that kind of thing? Is what I'm hearing from a lot of people, where we jump to the doctoral version instead of the emotional support. It's like guns. There's something wrong with them. There's nothing wrong with having guns. Well,
My concern here is that for those individuals who do seek doctoral help
hmm
and who do not choose to go the hormonal route but are instead pre-transition, how many times do you have to be told you're not whatever it is you believe you are by the people who are supposed to be helping you, that makes you say enough is enough that you decide to take your own life?
yeah,
And
and
looking in the mirror every day and not seeing what you believe to be the genuine you could be hugely taxing. Body dysmorphia is an issue that can lead to anxiety, not to mention the way individuals are treated for just trying to express themselves. If I come into let's say, I don't know, hockey one day wearing a pink shirt, am I going to get a bunch of ribbing? Probably. But I am obviously I'm secure enough in and of myself to know that it's not going to bother me that much. But for uh, teenagers, people in their early 20s, they're still developing, they're not 100% emotionally mature yet. These roadblocks, these denials, this sort of no you're not ism that goes on about this sort of thing can lead to very serious problems, and it's something
Absolutely.
that needs to be addressed better than we have been.
Point taken. I'll summarize what I mean in a couple of seconds, and that is basically I hope we're listening to the people who have issues. Like I said, what causes them to go into depression and what their needs are. I worry sometimes because sometimes their needs are imposed on them. If you understand what I'm saying, that's the guarded part that I concern myself with. I want every individual to feel comfortable in their skin in more ways than than I can mention. So yeah, it's a concern, and I always like to default to the people, the person involved, not the group, the person. I believe that individuals like you, we both believe this. I know from years of working with you, individuals have a right to arrive at a conclusion based on their experience, their knowledge, and their decision. We can't tell people how they feel. That's just not the way it works. And I worry sometimes, Aaron, that on the other side of the equation, there's people who are saying, "Oh, you must feel, just because a girl wants to play with a baseball bat doesn't mean that she wants to be a boy." Is all I'm saying. So let's not take other people's definitions and impose them on other people. Let's listen with our hearts to the people who have the issue directly. Let's listen to these children and stop telling, and I agree with you, stop telling them they don't feel that way, that it's their imagination. Let's listen to what these kids have to say and stop making it a political argument.
Yeah, that's these are
That's
people's lives we're talking about here. This is not for votes. It's
I hope I define my thinking process. Aaron, this was great. Thanks for doing it. It was nice to be back with you.
Yep, glad to be back, Frank.
All right. We'll work on Fridays.
Slowly but surely.
Slowly but surely, yeah. This week's been a nightmare for me. Yeah, I've never been this sick in the summer. It's the weirdest feeling. It truly is. It's
Well,
it's
keep me posted about Wednesday for now.
yeah, we'll do
Okay.
Wednesday. Wednesday we're
Okay.
good.
All
Obviously,
right.
we're good Wednesday. Thanks, buddy.
Excellent. All right,
Have a
man.
great day and enjoy going back to lacrosse and hockey. The bruise looks good on you. Later. I'm Candid Frank. He's Aaron William Freeland. This has been Candid Frank Live Mondays, Wednesdays, and soon to be Fridays. Talk to you soon.